institute these measures and be very rigorous at the state and local levels about limiting certain businesses, not all businesses. Most businesses can stay open. K through 12 can stay open. But we have to have masks. We have to limit indoor crowded spaces. If we do not do that, we will lose tens of thousands of Americans by the time the vaccine is out and widely distributed. So I am urging everyone, and you will hear every doc on the task force saying the same thing, that this is really crunch time. This is not crying wolf. This is a time that we need to really double down, because we are at the most serious and dangerous part of the pandemic that we have been in the United States until this time.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying. We have to hear it from the Vice President and from the President of the United States, because there are some 73 million Americans who will not listen to you or to me or anyone else unless they hear it from the man on Twitter. Thank you very much, Admiral. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Andrew, you guys start watching the War Room, to listen to the War Room, the 74 million. It's not about that. But here's what I think is the point. Mr. Jack Maxey and Fog City Midge is, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack Maxey, is that not the head of the CDC? That's Admiral. That's the Admiral.
Yeah, no, that Redfield's the head of the CDC.
Yeah, this is the Admiral that's in charge of the testing.
And he's one of those admirals that's not really an admiral. I mean, I
mean
hate,
from the Public Health Service, or
I hate to say this. I respect the office, and if you want to wear your dress blues for formal occasions, this to me is a little bit like It was bad when Oliver North showed up as a civilian employee in his Marine Corps uniform. This is, to me, awful form. I mean, it's like he's a fighter jock for COVID-19. He comes out to tell us to run for the bunkers. And I'm sorry, people. I'm not unhappy to tell you the fear needs to go away.
But this,
the comparison of ICU beds year over year is nothing like what they are describing it as.
Admiral Gerard. But here's, once again, one of the things we've been advocating to the administration daily is that you won. You're going to close on this victory. Going to go through a little choppy water, but we're going to close on this victory. You're going to be inaugurated on the 20th for your full second term, and you get 70 days bonus. Act like you're in charge. Number one, be firing people, doing all this. However, he's got his administration coming out here. This is Admiral Gerard, another one of the top guys in the task force, and he's giving you, we're not crying. I want to repeat, he's saying this is the toughest time of the entire, this is from a senior guy on the task force. This is the toughest time, the hardest time, the most dangerous time in this entire pandemic. And brother, you were sitting right here, my wingman, back in March and April when it's tearing through New York City like crazy. So my point is, and she's throwing the invective out there, oh, they only listen to the vice president, the president got to come forward. We know that's not true. But you have an administration that seems to be split here. You've got the guys in the task force, including Azar. Azar essentially came in and canceled Thanksgiving. You agree with that? In the tradition that we know it? It's not going to be Norman Rockwell with a bunch of people around the table. You're going to have just your immediate DNA.
I think it was either Pew or Gallup a few days ago came out with a poll saying that more than 50% of the people are just going to absolutely ignore any of the guidelines concerning Thanksgiving.
That's an option clearly everybody has in the libertarian anarcho world that you live. Right, not to, and that's fine. By the way, it's a right.
Particularly to describe them as something other than the real world, Steve. I mean, the real world does not define this.
This is Donald J. Trump's administration. I'm not listening to Biden's guys. I don't even dial those guys in since they're not going to be president. There's no need to listen to
I agree, but the way our system is set up is these health professionals, they have this objectivity that allows them to speak off the cuff and close down an entire
This is not off the cuff. This is not off the cuff. This is on a major. They're going out there with major news.
If it's not off the cuff, then how can he show me? I'm looking at the ICU bed availability in all these major cities around the country, and there's no problem. He just said we are at the worst moment in the history of this virus. This is not true. We are watching infections explode. We are watching deaths decrease. We are watching hospitalizations decrease. And if this virus is like any other virus, guess what? it's losing lethality as it goes through generation after generation. I think one of the things that's very frightening about this whole vaccine thing is if we're going to have to take it 3-4 times a year at $10 a pop in order to get to do anything because, oh my God, the world's going to come to an end. The Asian flu of 58, 59, I did some comparative stats. You had a 0.0006 chance of dying of that. You can't even find any record of it in the newspapers of the time. And at current numbers today, you have a 0.0007 chance of dying of COVID-19. The proportional response, just given another modern era pandemic, compared to what we've done today, is just off the charts. And you have to wonder, are they conditioning us? What's going to be the fear next year? You know, there's a deadly Asian pollen on the loose. At some point, the American people have to stand up and take the hits.
What do you think the administration ought to do here so they start speaking with, and Maggie or Greg jump in here, to start speaking with one voice? Because I just think you're getting conflicting things. You got Azar out today saying no Thanksgiving. In fact, Rick Grinnell, who's used to be part of the administration, he's a beast. He's out in Nevada, has been out in Nevada helping show that that's not certifiable. I hope that he would be part of the second administration, like in something like heading the CIA or at the FBI. Grinnell's out tweeting your thing about, a funeral can be 26, a dinner can only be 5. You know, my turkey's going to die on the 26th, and my pet turkey, I'm going to have a funeral for him. I know it's tongue-in-cheek, but he's a guy who's been part of the administration, and there's nobody more loyal to the president than Rick Grinnell. And now you've got the CDC guy coming out. You've got Admiral Giroir. You've got Tony Fauci that's saying, oh, no, this is going through the end of the third quarter of next year of 2021.
Well, you know the old idea of don't trust what someone says, trust what they do. And if you want a perfect example of just how frightening this virus is on January 18th, 2020, let's look at Governor Gavin Newsom at the French Laundry over the weekend. If it was as lethal as he seems to want to tell the people of California at his press conferences, then any rational person would not have put his life at risk to have a 5-star French meal out in Calistoga. Let's get real, people. This is nonsense.
You think that shows not just the hypocrisy, but really what they really think about this? It's not that lethal. They don't need to wear a mask. There's no social distancing. Is that what you?
Either he's irrational or he's not, right?
Well, it's sort of like Dianne Feinstein telling everyone she wants to do a nationwide mask mandate and pushing for the masks, but walking around the Senate, she herself is seen without a mask on. And this woman's 87 years old. You would think she'd be
She's a walking
at risk.
Comorbidity, right?
Yes.
Talk to us about the mask. I want to hear about is it Denmark? I want to hear about the study, and particularly our favorite. Remember, Lancet magazine, all these broke tradition of over 150 years. These are the highly regarded, esteemed scientific publications, essentially peer-reviewed journals. They all broke. I think it was Scientific American. It was Lancet, and a couple of others that had never been involved in politics whatsoever. Not only did they get involved in politics, they all endorsed, Orange Man bad. They endorsed Biden in a tremendous break from their customs and tradition. Now, the way I read this is that the individuals who collectively did this research study, which I believe has been the most comprehensive study done about masks, went to Lancet and the usual suspects, and they all passed on it.
Well, of course they did, because it doesn't fulfill the narrative. And I mean, this is the problem we've seen with Lancet. We've seen it with JAMA. When did these guys start writing political editorials during election season? This is a new phenomenon driven by Orange Man bad, or as one of our viewers reminded me yesterday, Orange Man badass. I mean, one of the problems that we have, you say, well, what should Trump do about this? You know what Trump has done from day one? He's put a brave face on this thing. He's walked around with courage. He's gone to rallies with hundreds of thousands of people and, shook hands and hugged people who needed it. You know why? Because he's a man. He's not a whimpering, pearl-clutching, Greek theater-living guy like Stabler up in Michigan, right? You know, I mean, cut me a break. At some point, we have to say enough is enough.
Listen, I think if the president had taken his actions of what he accomplished and what he drove and made that into a more coherent pitch during the campaign, the votes have been so overwhelming they couldn't even steal it with the Dominion voting system. I think his actions have been much stronger than the presentation they've made about the actions.
100%. I mean, this guy has handled this in a masterful fashion, if you will. I mean, think about it. We've got this vaccine, whether you want to use it or not. It's here. It's a very complicated vaccine, and they created it in, about 8 months? Bully for them. But he gets no credit for it. And now you've already got Cuomo saying, well, we're not going to take it unless New York State doctors say it's safe. Okay, Andrew, go back in the basement with Fredo and hide from the disease. The rest of New York State wants to open up, go to a bar, celebrate Thanksgiving, buy Christmas presents at Macy's, and have some fun. This is what America is about. Remember our founding document, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not terror, fear, and sadness.
I think if the president had it put out first, if you look at all the initial analysis that we had in the very first weeks of this program, whether it was Dr. Gabriel Leung at Hong Kong, of all the base institutes of at the Bloomberg School of Johns Hopkins, left to be not focused on with the ICU beds, the capacity utilization, all the issues on ventilators, therapeutics, everything. Everybody was projecting millions of people dead. Remember the first memo that Peter Navarro on the 29th, when Trump actually moved to do two things. One, restrict travel from China, but nobody talks about the second, quarantining people coming back, which hadn't been done in 50 or 60 years. It cut it down to, look, and obviously, 250,000 people or over 200,000 people dying is a horrible tragedy, but it's nowhere near what the initial estimates were. The initial estimates were here of catastrophic loss of life.
Well, initially we thought it was going to be
and by the way,
about
if these
2
guys
to 3% lethality.
Yes.
It's now 6 or 7 times lower than that.
Right.
So you can understand with that predictive fear, and this was data we got from our friends in the Communist Party in China, you could understand with that predictive fear that they went hardcore in March and April and wherever else, right? But now, when you're looking at the lethality drop, you're looking at the fact that we have all these therapeutics that work. There's no point in continuing like this.
I think we're going to be covering a lot more of the pandemic, getting back to more of our pandemic coverage, because it's the thing that it's the overarching event that has made this so unique, and we got to get into it now, particularly since the president, in starting his second term, has to, I think, understand that now we're talking about, remember, the pandemic drove an economic crisis that drove a capital markets crisis. We're out of this crisis. One of the reasons is we've just expanded or blown up the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, and we're running these massive deficits. And at some point in time, there's going to have to be a plan of how we get out here. We only get 40 seconds.
Debt makes us all slaves, and that's what the Democrat Party wants. Steve, this is part of a long-term plan.
There are no conspiracies, but there are also no coincidences. Talking about the Chinese Communist Party, we're going to have Liz Yore join us. I think one of the greatest men in the world, Cardinal Zen, all 5'3" of him. He's a giant among men. He's saying that, hey, the Chinese Communist Party, something's up with this virus. He's from Hong Kong. Also, something's up with the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and the schism happening right now. We're going to be back with all of it. War and pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Oh, definitely, Lou. I've just gotten some stunning evidence from a first-hand witness, a high-ranking military officer who was present when Smartmatic was designed in a way that and I'm going to just read you some of these statements, if you don't mind, so I get them exactly right from the affidavit. Designed in a way that the system could change the vote of each voter without being detected. He wanted the software itself to function in such a manner that if the voter were to place their thumbprint or fingerprint on a scanner, then the thumbprint would be tied to a record of the voter's name and identity as having voted, but that voter would not be tracked to the changed vote. He made it clear that the system would have to be set up but not leave any evidence of the changed vote for a specific voter, and that there would be no evidence to show and nothing to contradict that the name or the fingerprint or thumbprint was going with a changed vote. Smartmatic agreed to create such a system and produce the software and hardware that accomplished the result for President Chavez. After the Smartmatic electoral management system was put in place, he closely observed several elections where the results were manipulated using the Smartmatic software. One such election was December 2006 when Chavez was running against Rosales. Chavez won with a landslide over Rosales, a margin of nearly 6 million votes for Chavez versus 3.7 million for Rosales. In 2013, he witnessed another Venezuelan national election where the Smartmatic management system was used to manipulate and change the results for Chavez. And it goes on and on. He was in the...
That is Sidney Powell, and she's circling the enemy here. People should understand there's multiple data teams that are all over this. In fact, one of the better ones, or a really good one that came out early, was Raheem Kassam has one up on the National Pulse yesterday that goes through Michigan and goes through Pennsylvania. This one goes to, I think, specifically Pennsylvania. There are multiple data teams working on Michigan and Wisconsin. There's a data team working in Georgia. There was one in Nevada that I know of, and multiple. I've talked to a number of these people, and they're grinding away. Sidney Powell's got a separate investigation going on the Dominion voting system. Maggie, you've got some breaking news. Is something up on social media right now about Wisconsin?
Yeah, this is interesting. So a fellow named Andrew Hitt, he is the chairman of the Republican Party of Wisconsin.
Yep.
And he tweeted, "Breaking, Wisconsin election commissions, after seeing President Trump's recount petition and objections, is trying to change the recount manual at an emergency meeting tonight at 6 p.m. to make objections harder to make. This must be stopped."
You've seen the rats scramble right now. The cockroaches are trying to scramble to try to hide how they are trying to steal this election. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons that we're going to spend a lot more time in the pandemic, the president's got 4 years and 60 days, 70 days ahead of him, right? There's going to be, I think, a rethinking of how one approaches this pandemic. I would actually recommend, we're the first ones to tell the president or recommend the president be a wartime president back in the spring. We had the recommendation that instead of doing the 30 days to do suppress the curve, we were to crush the virus. If you're going to do it, shut down, actually do a quarantine like Wuhan, don't have any domestic travel. If you're going to do 30 days, do 30 days, right? So we've always been the hardest core. In fact, the president said at a press conference when he was asked about the show, he goes, "Yeah, Steve, it's always he's always going to give you the hardest. He's always going to take the hardest road." But the reason is he's won, and you're going to go through, and folks, remember, we're going to have some good days and we're going to have some bad days. But as we've been talking about this now for months, this election integrity project, transition integrity project, which they call it, which was how to steal the election, and we went into this concept of the plot to steal 2020. I would love to go back and play that. It's like a TED Talk. And Raheem and I'm very proud of the work that the team, Vish and others, and Alexander Priet and others, to put together the great people we talked to around the country. And really what we said is that we kind of said, hey, here's what's going to happen, and exactly how it has happened. Even that being said, I think we're pretty stunned, you would agree, Jack, how brazen it is, and actually the gall of how dumb they must think we are to accept this. But now you've got a multi-front war. And this war goes from Wisconsin to Michigan to Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and maybe Arizona. But 5 of those 6. And you only need 3. You only need really Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. But Wisconsin and everybody up there of voices I trust say this one of all of them stinks to high heaven, okay, with the voting patterns, etc. So the president wires the $3 million, which is to start the process. It's a recount audit canvas at the same time. I think they may have gone through already when their plummy canvases. But this is to go back and to check the receipts, which they don't have. And already they're playing games. If Joe Biden Don't go back to the car dealership. Don't go back to the Toyota parking lot, the car park, with the latest the 2021 brands, the 2021 models, and talk to an empty car park with the Toyota Land Cruisers, and talk with all your happy talk of unity. You've already sold out your country to the Chinese Communist Party. We know that for a fact because we do have the receipts of your scumbag son, the drug addict junkie who sold out his country. When he's bragging about on a call, he's dealing with the head of the spy for the CCP. And then we've got the wire transfer, the check, the signed engagement letter. We're working through how we're going to weaponize this.
We've got the attorney down in Biloxi, Mississippi, who creates the plausible deniability by meeting James Biden and Hunter Biden at the Four Seasons in Atlanta. We've got the billing records for that, guys. It's telephone calls, the full 9 yards, as the Biden crime family was trying to sell American oil and gas interests to the Communist Party of China.
Ridiculous, awful. You're totally compromised. You've sold out to the CCP, right? You got Henry Kissinger out there wandering around. He's taking money with both hands from the CCP, saying, "Oh, if we don't reverse what Trump's going to do, we're going to have World War I. Let's bring up the trenches. Let's bring up the worst nightmare the American people have. You're going to have World War I if you don't stop, you don't reverse what Trump does. If you don't kowtow, if you don't become a tributary state, Henry the K, right? The same bill of goods you and Graham Allison tried to sell the American people back in the 70s before Ronald Reagan came on and said, hey, how about this? We win, they lose with the Russians, right? The Soviets. So you've got this, and this is why it behooves the administration to start acting like they're in charge now, because you are in charge. There's not going to be a transition. Forget the transition, people. Don't pay attention. There's not going to be a transition. You're the president. You're going to be the president. But you're seeing all the cockroaches come out from, scrambling out from the rocks are being turned over. So, Joe Biden, if you want to unite the country, call the Democratic Party in Wisconsin right now and say, no, what I want you to do is fully cooperate. I want to show the American people, and I specifically want to show the Trump voters who think you're illegitimate and illegal, brother, and not one. I don't care what all these phony polls are saying. You saw 1 million people show up, or 500,000 people, but more people that have ever showed up in your entire political career, okay, came out on Saturday from all over the country. Tell your people, cooperate fully. Radical transparency. Let's start in Wisconsin. Let's show the world. Let's show the American people. Because this is going to be trench warfare. We're not going to back off an inch. Let me give you a news flash. We're winning. We're winning. You can tell they're winning because they're scrambling right now in Wisconsin. They're putting, look at what they did to the two officials last night that did not want to certify the vote, with all the outrageousness that happened in Wayne County. Jump in here, Greg.
So it's an even split, Democrats and Republicans, for this elections commission. So that's something to keep
on
an eye
Monday. On Monday.
Yep.
Absolutely. There's 2 and 2. My strongest recommendation: the President of the United States should go to Atlanta on Saturday. He should be there at the State House. Lighten up Kemp. Lighten up these other spineless weasels that were put in because he went down there and campaigned and endorsed Kemp. Now this guy can't be found, right? You should be down there at the rally. There'll be 100,000 people. You should do a rally. I'm going to pick a random date and a random place. Lansing on Monday, right, with the Board of Elections. Remember, some of the engine room is in meltdown now because the Citizens Free Press, Kane and the team, we love those guys, are reporting all the counties have. But it's subject to an audit. Now, the audit is by the Secretary of State, so we got issues there, but it's subject to an audit in Wayne County, and this is going to be fought. I believe you're going to go in and get an injunction and go in and find out what exactly happened, particularly all the intimidation that took place for the Republican officials. Or, as the Secretary of State referred to them last night, just ministerial. Last time I looked at, they were just ministerial. See, they're just dismissive, just ministerial. Last time I looked at, they were the local elections board. I think they got a function called certifying. All the Democrats are lying in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Nevada. If you guys are so open, here's the bottom line. The presidency would be a poisoned chalice for you. Note to self, Twitter, that's just a figure of speech. Okay, I'm not saying poison anybody. It's just a figure of speech. I'm going to go back and start using Horatio at the gates here in a second. So hold it. It's a poison chalice because 74 million people will never accept you unless you had radical transparency in this process. And we came to the conclusion, and was coming to the conclusion, that it would be only legal votes that are certifiable. Breaking news in Wisconsin, they're going to fight Trump every step of the way because they're trying to hide what they stole. If you didn't steal it, let's just get it all out there. You're a bunch of thieves, and we're not going to let you steal Trumpism's greatest victory. Back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we got breaking news. The president is out. This whole situation in Wisconsin, we have somebody's attention. What happened with the president?
Yeah, the president's on it. Either he's watching this show or somebody else is watching this show. But yeah, he just retweeted the tweet that we read several minutes ago. Breaking news from Wisconsin from, chairman of the GOP, Andrew Hitt. He's
engaged now. He's canceled his long-standing tradition of going to Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving. He's down for the fight. This is going to be intense, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to take political capital, political muscle, media savvy, legal. People are going to be working long hours, but we need everybody out there to have the back of the president during this fight. We want all the Democrats that listen to the show. And particularly, we got a ton of hecklers into the comment section. That's fine. The crew loves that. We believe we're going to convert you one day, just with the overpowering logic of the arguments that are presented here and the people that are presented here. I want to now go to and jump in here. We get tons of breaking news happening all the time now. By the way, Senate just leaves town for recess without Shelton being, and I think Shelton's a big deal. Shelton is not just a gold bug. She brings, I think, a sense of market reality to the Federal Reserve that is desperately needed, and she's not, she's in hang fire right now. Want to bring in Liz Yore, and Liz, before you're here, we're going to talk about the CCP, we're going to talk about Cardinal Zen, we're going to talk about McCarrick, we're going to talk about how this all ties into the geopolitical situation we find ourselves in with the CCP virus, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. You're from Chicago. You've been a prosecutor there. You've been part of the system. What is going on in Chicago about, and I believe it starts Monday, that the mayor is saying that she's going to basically put in recommending a quarantine going in. What's the mood in Chicago right now?
Well, the mood in Chicago is that everybody's going to celebrate Thanksgiving as usual, despite lightweight, as I call her, and her dictates, as well as our Governor J.B. Pritzker, who's probably going off to Florida for his Thanksgiving celebration. It's just, Chicago, like New York, is a ghost town. The buildings are empty. It's just, they're driving the economy into the ground. People are really fed up. They are, you're not going to deny them their vacations, their holidays, their treasured experiences that they have in the streets of Chicago. But I'm telling you, this is getting to be the feeling that there is a coordinated effort among all the Democratic big city mayors and governors to drive the economy and impose this basically martial law on the United States. And I think the million-person march in D.C. proved that people are fed up. and they are going to push back. And I know lots of Illinoisans that are heading to Wisconsin to support President Trump to do what they can do for this big vote. So, it's just, at some point, the Trumpers have a long fuse, but I think we're really coming to the end of this being pushed around by these tyrannical Democrats, both in Michigan, Wisconsin, and especially in my state of Illinois.
See, this is where I think if he just been a little more focused on the campaign, and I think even particularly now starting his second term, is that I think there's many moderate Democrats and even some of the Bernie bros, men and women support Bernie Sanders, that just can't take the lockdowns anymore. You got to give them an alternative to the lockdowns, and they don't want to look. They want something that's logical. They want something that's science-based, that's evidence-based. But people are just not going to take these lockdowns anymore. You look at these great American cities, and I take New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and D.C. These are ghost towns. We can't. Our civilization is predicated and based upon. Although we love the hinterland, and that's where the power of Trumpism comes from. The big cities are a symbol of the advanced society and civilization we live in. Four of the greatest cities in the world are ghost towns. New York City and Chicago are flat out scary, how empty they are. And I don't understand how public officials can sit there and think through the economic carnage that is happening every day. First of all, the opportunity cost for young men and women, for education, for careers, for just getting on with their life, building their families, family formation. But the other thing is just the essential basic finances of the country. I don't know how you're dreaming about some Green New Deal and some climate change plan when you're going to be so buried in debt, you're going to have a Japanification of the American economy given this huge overhang of debt. And so, Liz...
I'll tell you, these suburban moms whose kids haven't been in school for 8 months, I mean, they are in a fury. And I think that's why Trump won the suburban moms, myself. And, I mean, it's the unions who are digging in their heels and will not return to school. And this is the population that's not at risk, the children.
So, Liz, let's pivot now to Cardinal Zen. In this article today that came out that said that he's already the church in China, and he's going to lead it, is already schismatic with the Vatican. This is all about geopolitics also, besides the Christian faith. This is about the Chinese Communist Party going deep into the cultural and religious institutions in the world to try to defeat essentially the West. So walk us through what these articles said today.
Sure. Cardinal Zen said because of the Vatican, Pope Francis's continued support of the CCP and the secret deal, that there is in fact a schism between the underground Catholic Church, the faithful underground Catholic Church, and the patriotic church, which is literally a creation of CCP. And you'll recall that the Pope had forced Catholics to join the CCP Patriotic Church. And these Catholics in China aren't going to do it. They know it's a fraud. They know it's just an instrument of the brutal CCP. And so what's happening Cardinal Zen is calling it out, says there is a schism in the Catholic Church in China. And, he also said, and I think this is interesting, he also said that nothing remains of the Hong Kong one country, two systems promise. Hong Kong is dead. And the CCP has taken control of the Catholic Church. They are calling all the shots. He is frankly being fairly quiet, but he said that if he has to speak up, he will. But this, in my estimation, Steve, is the great godless reset, which is going on. Shockingly, it's being implemented also by the Vatican, but China is attacking the Catholic Church with the cooperation of Pope Francis and driving it into underground in both China as well as in Hong Kong. And frankly, we're seeing a similar situation play out here in the United States with the Catholic Church. The traditional Catholics who support Trump versus the Biden, I call them the Biden non-Catholics. but the schism is beginning to surface a great deal. And again, it's this great reset that is really about the Islamic communist bloc taking down Western Judeo-Christian civilization. And, somebody like Zen, Cardinal Zen, who's been around forever and understands the dynamics with the CCP. And, this is why that Hunter Biden laptop is so important, because this alliance with China by the son and of the prospective presidential candidate is very, very troubling. Because as we see what's happening in China, in Hong Kong, is that at our doorsteps here in the United States? And so, the Vatican is at the center of this global, what I call the global godless reset. And we're going to see, in fact, tomorrow, what's happening in Assisi is Pope Francis is sponsoring this huge seminar conference called the Economy of Francesco. And this Economy of Francesco is the promotion of socialism. It is also the denigration of capitalism. I mean, and all of this is coordinated, Steve, with the globalists. Because the architect of globalism, Jeffrey Sachs, the economist from Columbia Law School, from Columbia School, has been parked at the Vatican for the last 5-6 years. And he has been promoting population control, climate change, socialism. He was the one actually who escorted Bernie Sanders throughout the Vatican. So we're going to have 3 days of this non-stop attack on capitalism that's coming from Assisi, and it's going to be promoted by Francis, by Jeffrey Sachs, and I'll tell you, Catholics around the world are incensed that Pope Francis is embracing this population control, pro-abortion globalist as his spokesman at this big economy conference. And so you see the global reset, both on the religious end as well as on the economic end, starting to unroll. And it seems like it's happening at a very quick pace. But it's only the traditional Catholics, the traditional Christians, and the Trump movement that is going to be the brakes on this CCP-driven, Pope Francis-driven, globalist-driven communist agenda that is at our doorstep.
Here's one of the things you said that's so shocking, I think, for the audience out there who remembers John Paul II and Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan and kind of the triumvirate. They worked together to take down the Soviet Union, the evil empire. We win, they lose. And how important John Paul II, not just as a moral authority, but also with the relationships in Eastern Europe, obviously being Polish. You said Francis supports the CCP. I mean, when you really take that out and think about it, it's stunning. And you're absolutely correct. The reason that this deal is secret, one of the things we talk about this, so they have a secret arrangement with the CCP that they mentioned. They talk about it, and this is one of the things Zen is hammering on. This secret deal that was started by Mr. McCarrick, who's been thrown out of the only cardinal, I think, in church history, the highest cardinal ever thrown out and laicized or turned out of the priesthood, is that one of the reasons it's secret, Miles Gross said that they're taking cash for it. They're taking cash money, billions of dollars a year, which they've never refuted. And we've been on and on about this. It's never refuted. Yeah. We said that, it's the Vatican bank's a money laundering operation. The Knights of Malta, that bank is a money laundering operation, ought to launder money. But it's the support for cash. But here's the secret part of it. Because it has a pathway to full diplomatic relationships and throwing not just Hong Kong, but Taiwan and the Free Chinese of the diaspora under the bus. This is a pure power politics move with the Vatican as a political entity. You're sat there and said Francis supports, and when you go back and look at the record, he absolutely does support the CCP. Right? This is a guy who said, you're not a Christian if you want to build a wall. If you want to build a wall on the southern border, remember, he went down and had a mass, you're not a Christian. He had to back off. Liz, we're going to ask you to hang on. We're going to take a short commercial break. Frank Walker is going to join us, but we're going to have you stay over because I got a couple of things I got to ask you on the other side of our version of capitalism. selling a few ads. This is War Room Pandemic. We're going to return with Liz Yore and Frank Walker. Frank Walker from Canon 212 in the War Room next.
Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, first off, my phone is blowing up. People absolutely love your film, your 8-minute film we played in the first hour at the last thing. How do people get it? How do people get access to it?
It's on my YouTube, Fog City Midge. So you can just go to my YouTube channel if you guys want to subscribe and check out the video there, as well as many other films.
We would put it up on ours, but we want to make sure she drives the traffic, so she gets the traffic. So once again, how do people get to it?
Fog City Midge YouTube.
Okay, go to her YouTube. You get to see the whole film. Breaking news out of Pennsylvania?
Yep, in Pennsylvania, the campaign has filed an amended complaint, which is 86 pages long, and so they hit their deadline for that, and it's progressing forward, and now, tomorrow, the Democrats have an opportunity to respond to this amended complaint.
Remember, in Wisconsin, they're trying to change the rules tonight. President Trump wired $3 million, wants to start the recanvass, the audit, and the recount in Wisconsin to get the cockroaches underneath.
And you
them.
notice this, right? They changed the rules on the voting, and they didn't get their way. So now they're changing the rules on the counting. This is not coincidental, people. This is a planned attack on our democracy.
Liz, I want to go. And you said, Liz, that the people in Chicago and Michigan are heading up to Wisconsin to volunteer. I think it's amazing. Real quickly, before we get to Frank Walker of Canon 212, I've got to ask you, once again, just repeat, because we're going to try to get you on the morning show. What is going on in Italy tomorrow in the town of Assisi that the Pope is heading up?
Conference in Assisi, November 19th through the 21st. So it's 3 days. One of the headline speakers is a brain trust from George Soros, Jeffrey Sachs. So no one has any question about who's promoting this, who is, and the whole theme is to promote communism and socialism and tear down capitalism. And unfortunately, they're focusing on the young people. This is going to be a large young person crowd, and he is using George Soros's spokesman, Jeffrey Sachs, who has been the benefactor for 20 years of George Soros. So there is no question that who's behind, pulling the strings of Pope Francis for George Soros. It's 3 days. It's going to be nonstop, probably attacking Trumpism. And but we're all aware, but know that the people behind it are the globalist elite, and they are out to, number one, destroy the Catholic Church and destroy Western civilization, especially capitalism in America. We are at the cusp, and we need to pay attention.
Okay, before Media Matters and Madeline Peltz has a complete meltdown, what Liz Yore said is not anti-Semitic. It's just a matter of fact. Jeffrey Sachs, I've known Jeffrey Sachs since my days turning around the Biosphere 2 project, when Jeffrey Sachs was brought in later after I left to head up the Earth Institute at Columbia University, and was a disaster there. He's had a history. This is after he destroyed the Russian economy. So this guy's had a history in being a business source. Liz, how do you get your social media? How do people get to you?
Twitter, Elizabeth Yore, also at Parlor, Elizabeth Yore, and my website, Yore, Y-O-R-E, children.com.
Okay, Liz Yore. Now I want to go to Frank. Thank you, Liz. We'll try to get to you tomorrow to go through the Assisi conference. This is how they roll. Remember, there's no conspiracy, but there are no coincidences. This is the way they start to set their narrative, is they do it with the education of the young, and this is very important, what they're doing to push their version. They are totally anti-capitalist. I want to go now to Frank Walker of Canon 212. If you don't go to that site, you're missing it. Absolutely. I click on every article, and I think it's because of Frank's knows how to write headlines, so everything's clickbait to me. But you had an article in there it's very important. And what it was about is that, we had these quite tough restrictions on refugees for a host of reasons. Biden's already said one of the first policy pronouncements he's made, he's going to increase the refugees, I think, up to 150,000 a year, which is essentially 10x what President Trump has. But part of that, the Catholic Church supports that. Part of the reason, is it not true, Frank, is that it's a big cash flow business for certain aspects of the Catholic Church. You want to explain what the article's about?
It is. Well, the article simply said that he spoke to the Jesuit Refugee Service, which is a big entity that is used to sort of shuttle illegal aliens, get them in the country, provide them legal services and training and job training and everything that they need. And back before Trump, it was, an ever-increasing business. Not just them, Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services. It's something that means an awful lot to the bishops. And for him to go there and say he's raising the cap, he did it in a recorded thing. I would think maybe he could just do it live, but I guess they're being careful. But to go there says to them, here comes the gravy train again. And, it's the same way over in Europe. They take this illegal alien idea and they turn it into the Catholic religion. You can see by the money trail how they actually are making Catholicism into something that they're paid to do. Just like you find out in China's paying so much money to Francis. I think the Islamic nations are paying a lot of money to him too. They had a poster campaign against Francis, a grassroots thing a few years back, and then they funded sort of a counter campaign with posters all over Rome, and it was funded by a Dubai sheikh. Now they just made a cardinal in Brunei. Well, Brunei only has 20,000 Catholics, but that's just like a few churches, but they have a cardinal. My folks live in northern Pennsylvania. They closed down 3 or 4 churches and they have one priest, but in Brunei, they have a cardinal. The state song is "God Bless the Sultan" in Brunei. It's in the China Sea. What kind of a cardinal is that going to be? See, so the money flow is what's behind this illegal immigration on both sides of the Atlantic.
Real quick, Frank, is it because that the parishioners are not hitting the collection plates because they're turned off by what they see as this kind of brazen embrace of the Chinese Communist Party and communism overall? Is that why the cash is they're so desperate that they got all these different revenue streams?
Well, that's a little bit of a chicken and the egg. Yes, they have a dying Catholic population because they have, they've done so much to destroy it. But I think that's something that was desired by the powers that be. I think that's important. Like with this, with the scamdemic now that I heard Jack Maxey call it the other day. That's a good word for it. They don't let the churches open. Today in Ireland, Archbishop Diarmid said, the Catholic faith is more than just buildings, which is, very arrogant. And in France, Archbishop of Paris, Aupetit, said, you're getting us all in trouble with that little thing that you do over in the corner, meaning the Mass. The actual Catholic Mass is getting him in trouble. He's being so harassed. So I think the power wants and it's not, and they're getting a lot of money.
Frank, we got to bounce. We're going to have you on later in the week. Frank Walker, Canon 212. It's a site you got to go to. See you tomorrow at 10.